I can advance this. Okay. First question, applicant information. This might sound silly, but honestly, double check your spelling and accuracy. I don't know how many of you use Grammarly. It is completely free to install on your computer, and I think it does a really nice job spell checking and doing some grammar suggestions as you go along. You're going to want to use your official pharma organization name. If you are applying as a fiscal sponsor, you might need to clarify that that's the case. And usually
Can
a grant.
I ask what a fiscal sponsor is, please?
Yeah. So in Care Farming Network's world, we are a program or initiative of Red Wiggler Care Farm. So what we have to do is decide, and so the fiscal sponsorship, although probably not a great, we're actually a program of, but there are farms, and I don't think any of you are fiscally sponsored by another organization. But it would be if you're an organization that is essentially housed under another organization, or somebody is providing, say, accounting services and whatnot for you. Okay, the first question that we put in here was a project summary. And as I say here, the project summary, this is the first thing that a grant reviewer is going to read. It's usually going to have some kind of character or word limit on it, and it's usually short. And if you think of this as your project's handshake, this is your storefront. This is, nobody has any idea what you are doing. So this is like your place to introduce what you are wanting to do in your project and maybe a little bit about you. So leading with impact. One of the questions is, why does this matter? What are you going to do? What difference is this going to make? And an example here is we will expand access to therapeutic farming for 5 adults with developmental differences in rural Minnesota. Very, like, imagine, again, nobody knows who you are and what you're doing. And I find in grant writing, a lot of times we hold all of this knowledge in our head. This is a place to kind of dumb it down and simplify it, but also keeping it short, keeping it compelling, not using a lot of jargon. This is your written version of your elevator pitch. So you should be able to say it within 30 seconds. And you're answering that question, so what?
And just to clarify, this is project-based, meaning you're not giving the elevator speech of who you are, you're giving the elevator speech of what you want to do.
Exactly. So if you know that your funder is offering up to $10,000 grants for people that want to focus on health equity, your project is going to have to somehow address health equity. And this is the place where you're going to talk about what your project, what your request for funding is going to do. Lastly, the so what question is, why does it matter right now? Sometimes there's a sense of urgency to this. Without this funding, we can't do this. So you're really going to want to, again, connect your work and your project to some issue, specifically the issue that the grantor, the funder, is most interested in. Couple other things just on the project summary. I know this is a lot of bullet points for a short paragraph, but helpful, hopefully. Highlighting your uniqueness. Why you? You know, if you were, I used to write a lot of grants for a food bank. Well, there was tons of food banks and food pantries. What was making us different? They want to know why you're the right fit. And using active language, this is actually sometimes how Grammarly helps. I tend to write in the passive voice. Active language keeps you using words like that are very strong action verbs. As you can see, you're doing something, increasing, training, growing, connecting. Already mentioned, but you're aligning with the funder's mission. So when I'm writing a grant, I'm constantly going back to the types of questions that they are looking at. If possible, I'm looking at who have they also funded? What matters to them? And a lot of grantors will provide that information from past grant recipients. Again, keep it concise. No long paragraphs. You want some short, punchy sentences, and you want this hook. So this is a place where maybe even 1 or 2 sentences, you can paint this picture, you can share a fact, you can share a story. Sometimes you can actually share an image that is making this reviewer want to read on and learn more. Anyone have any questions on that before we move on with project summary? Okay, so our second question kind of gets to the meat of the matter. So what is the problem or the need that your project, your funding request is going to address? As it says, this is your convincing statement. If this isn't strong, if you yourself don't know what you're going to do if awarded grant funds, it's going to come through in a weak problem or need. So this is where you have to be really specific. And it can be helpful to specifically be local here. So don't just say people need more access to food. You're saying in my county, here's a statistic, and here's how I'm going to solve that problem of food insecurity by offering this. The other end of things, data can get a little dry. So weave data into a story. You can humanize your data by painting a picture or providing an example of somebody who is the benefit of the services or the work that you're doing. And if you have the time, this might be in a larger grant proposal. It does help to root your need in evidence. So if you know, just like in the first example there, that there's a data point there that you can use. You can refer to reports or perhaps a survey you've done or some kind of stakeholder feedback. We know this to be true. And again, this is how we will solve for. Again, the urgency piece on it. You need the money now. You're asking for the money now. And you're saying without support, we can't continue to do X, Y, or Z. In this case, we can't offer sessions to veterans during the upcoming growing season. You want to, again, connect directly to your project so that when you read your project summary, the need or the problem that you're identifying is relating right back to your project summary. That you say in your project summary that you are going to be doing the things that you're going to do. Don't introduce something new. Make them link together. And then you're just going to want to, again, highlight who's most affected. Talk about who it is that you're serving and working with. Think about using respectful, person-centered language. I don't think I need to say anything to y'all about that, but grants can read a little wonky sometimes if you're not careful with your language. Sometimes you might have to also define your language for somebody who's reading if they're not familiar with the term. Although I will say, I think I said this before, avoid using jargon. If you have an acronym, spell it out. And lastly, frame positively. You can paint really bleak pictures and kind of be heroic in your grant and say you're going to solve for, but really people want to see that you're there coming with inspiration, coming with hope, coming to solve in a problem, and you lead with from a point of solution. Before going on, anything on the problem or need? Ideas, questions? Okay.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes or no?
The part that always feels intimidating is using the right language. I feel like the language is changing, the language is regionally based, and if you say the wrong thing, you can, be canceled.
So I have an answer for that one because I have past history applying for grants around mental health. And so what we've done, as those things can change really quickly, is you have to go to look at the funder and read through their website, read through their, like, what they're putting out, what their papers say. A lot of these funders will have white papers out there about like their beliefs or what they're trying to do. And I was always taught, this might be outdated, but I was always taught to try to find catchphrases that they use and use them in your grant, because it signals to them that you have done your homework if they catch it. And if they don't catch it, they just feel like you get them, right? They're like, oh, this sounds great, because it was their own words, right? So they're going to recognize those things. So if you know who the funder is, you should be able to go and find some of the stuff that they've said and then just borrow it.
But they're not necessarily going to be using developmental disability or intellectual disability or people with autism. It's like those particular words, I feel like I still get stuck on those, you know? Are they a client of my farm? Are they a participant? Are they a, like someone said, oh, you can't say farm hands because farm hands has a connection to slavery and nobody wants to be a farmhand. It's like language like that really, that I'm always unsure of who has the most updated words.
Well, first I would say use the language that you use and don't be too worried about that. I will say, like, as an example, I'm not, and I love what Jen was saying, because like if you write a job description, or I'm sorry, a cover letter, there's always like a good point in your cover letter to point back to the mission of the organization that you're applying for. Again, I know what you do, and this is why I'm a good fit. So I do echo
Right.
that advice, if it's relevant and available. The other thing is you can have somebody, we'll get to this in a second, but have somebody read your grant. And if something rises up that feels really uncomfortable, ask people to have an eye for that as they're reading. I was
Mhm.
just using the word pioneering. Andrea and I were talking about this. Like, is pioneering in its
Mhm.
own way, like kind of more of a pejorative now? So I think as language evolves, so will we, but you have your own language. And if you call people participants or growers or clients, then use that language. Yeah, trust yourself on that.
I have a question about like populations that you're going to serve. Like, should you focus on one specific group, or is there like a certain number in terms of like, or like how specific should you be in terms of like who you want to serve, or like how, like how you should be framing that if maybe you want to work with more than one population?
Erin, if it's okay, let's get through that, or let's just pause on that question, because I think we're going to have a little bit more of a conversation about that as we go through this. And then we can revisit. Okay, so these next couple of slides, these are a little bit more black and white. At least in the grant application that we put together, goals and activities are pretty simple. The goals is what you want to achieve, and the activity is how you do it. To use an example is my goal is to strengthen and boost my metabolism. And my activity is going to be that I will run 3 times a week. So keeping goals SMART, again, acronym, be specific, have a measurable, make it achievable, make it relevant, give it a time. And again, tie them back to your project summary, because you're going to have to, again, this is not a place in your goals and activities. Whoops, this is going backwards. Oh, great. To change anything up. Your goals and activities should match your project summary, what you said you were going to do. This is just how you're going to do it. We have a question about impact. This is a little bit different than your goals, because this is where you show how your project actually creates change. As it says, people want to know what you'll do, not just what you'll do, but what difference it makes. So I want to spend 1 second on the difference between output and outcomes. Output goes back to those activities. In my example, I'm going to run 3 times a week. In this example, you will host 6 workshops. Outcome is what happens after you host 6 workshops, after the outputs have been finalized. There's going to be a change, and the outcome is the change that you'll see as a result. So if you host 6 workshops, participants will report an increased confidence in farming skills as an outcome. And again, funders are caring about outcomes. They don't necessarily need to know exactly the data of what you're going to do. You set it in your goals and activities. They want to know what change will be made. And centering around people, not just numbers. Know that quantitative impact, quantity means quantity, so it's around numbers, it's around data, it's around percentage, versus qualitative impact. Those are more your testimonials, your stories, your observed changes. So you can use both, or just know that there's a bit of a difference between those two. But going back to measurable, providing something in there for your output, for your outcome, where it is measurable, goes back to your goals, your SMART goals. One of those is measurement, and even small measures count. Don't underestimate the power of like putting some data in there around saying what you're going to do and providing a measurement, even if you think that it is minuscule. It really shows funders that that change means something. So with the timeline question in this grant, 5 things to keep in mind. Can always break your project into phases. An example, I'm going to plan it, I'm going to launch it, I'm going to implement, I'm going to evaluate. But be realistic and have your milestones. As you're planning, as you're launching, as you're implementing, give a date, start and end. Again, be realistic, align with the grant, make sure that you are following the funder's window. So if you're applying for a grant in October, you might not get the funds until January if awarded. You might not want to have your grant start in December or November or December. Think about their timeline. And obviously, you know, especially with farming, add flexibility. There might be something happening that you are going to have to account for, maybe even make a note of that, you know, if, you know, this is weather dependent or whatever dependencies you might have. No harm in doing that in your timeline up front. So later on, if you're awarded funding, you don't have to go back and explain why things aren't working. This is just an example timeline. You'll see very clear months, activities, and milestones. It can be this simple. We're asking for a budget, and a budget, don't let this scare you. Your budget is the financial story of your project. Even though it might be in a spreadsheet, it should tell the story just as your written narrative is. So you want to make sure that you're matching your narrative. And all those goals and activities, you want to see those represented in your budget. If you need staffing, if you need supplies, if you need marketing, match them up. And you're going to see some redundancy here because being clear and realistic is really important. You don't have to get right into, you know, I need to buy Gatorade from Target. That can be supplies. So use simple categories. If you have any in-kind or matching contributions, show those. And everyone understand what in-kind donations are? Maybe you're going to use volunteer labor to build a shed. You want to include that. You're not asking the funder for that, but you're showing that you have some skin in the game. And keep it easy to read. We're asking you to upload a simple Excel spreadsheet, which can easily be converted into a PDF. So this next slide will show you an example budget. That's exactly that. very simple categories, some description, so the funder can actually understand that that personnel is going to be working those amount of hours for $25 an hour. It's showing that total cost of $3,000 under personnel, but you might have some matching or in-kind support, so note that. And you're doing this for each of the categories. Again, very clear. Indirect costs, I should just note this. Those are any costs that aren't necessarily associated with the grant request, but you're asking for some of them. So in this case, the administrative costs of printing and phone. You might always have a printing and phone, but you're weaving those in to help support some kind of general operating costs, if you will, that you'll be doing this project and using those indirect costs for. So you're asking for some reimbursement on those. Andrea, I think in here, let's see, you had a note, another sample budget. We can also send that out via email, but in one of the beginning care farming series, we had a sample budget from Red Wiggler that we can share if that's helpful. And you'll get these slides too. Kind of coming down to the end here, we included, and not all grants do this, but there is a personal reflection section. And this really is just oftentimes optional if it is, but I would suggest anything that's optional, think about doing it. If they're offering you the chance to add some additional information, provide it. In our case, this is the section where you can speak from your heart. You can tell a story that maybe you weren't able to tell in another part of your grant because the word or character count was too small. These might be the types of stories that you tell on a regular basis to your friends or family or others. So you have to make them up. Authenticity and honesty is important, gives you another chance to tell your why. Gives you another chance to connect your story back to the project. And in our case, I think the personal reflection, especially since y'all have spent almost a year as a cohort, is there was a reason that you joined, this mentorship program. So and I think we asked a little bit of this, even in our application for mentees. Why Care Farming Network? What are you going to get out of this? What do you want to do? Everybody is so inspired and we lose track of this about why we do what we do. And this is the section to explain that from a heart-centered approach. Again, keeping it people-centered. Funders give dollars, but they really do invest in people. So if you have values that you want to lift up or lived experience, add them in there. At the same time, keep it professional. Show your commitment, the continuity piece. You can talk about what you've done in the past and how you're building on that now, maybe asking for some funding to continue to build on what was already successful. And I would say most importantly, you're ending with your vision. There's this bigger story out there that connects to your personal story. And it kind of leaves this inspirational, hopeful tone as somebody finishes reading. So, a couple final tips. Proofread. Nothing kills a great grant application like grammar errors that, or just something that could have been fixed pretty easily. As I mentioned, ask someone to review. We're going to review each other's grants and provide feedback. Always helpful. Aligning with that funder's mission. Concise, compelling, clear. I noted in here that sometimes in a grant application, you'll see that they are open to having a discussion with you before you apply. Larger funders might have a person on staff who is willing to take questions, or you can send them a brief intro and say, hey, I'd love to make sure that got a couple different ideas for projects. Might you have time, very short amount of time, so I can bounce them off of you and you can tell me which one might resonate more with you as a funder. Many grants, foundations, whatnot, also don't offer that, but keep an eye out in case they do. And if your grant isn't awarded and they're offering the chance to provide feedback, reach out to them. Because if you are repurposing some of your grant and they're willing to be candid and direct with you, you can really learn quite a bit from a funder about what didn't resonate. So I'm going to actually, and I'll send these out in an email too, but I'm going to just go ahead and share them in the chat in case you want to dig into them right after this meeting. Did you find them helpful? Do you have questions? If you all are having ideas around your own grants and you might have questions specifically, this is a great time to bring those forward. On our agenda, I just want to note, just for in terms of our next steps as a cohort, it's September 17th. On October 1st, we're asking for those grant applications to be submitted to us. The reason being, from October 2nd through the 14th, I'm going to make sure that everybody has access to each other's grant applications. And you on your own time, and us behind the scenes here, will be providing some or have the ability to read them. And then when we come back together, we will be able to spend time on October 15th so that we can provide a feedback. And I have to think through a little bit more about what that would look like so it all makes sense. I envision kind of creating a real high level feedback form so that as you're reading others' grants, what is one thing that was really compelling, what could get a little bit more work. So expect to have that so that when you're reviewing, you can jot some notes down, and we'll do the same.
Is there like a dollar amount that you recommend, or is it based on the project that we're choosing?
Again, if you have a grant in mind that you think you're going to be going for, I might say lead with that. So you don't have to do this all over again. That brings up a good question. Like, some grantors won't even tell you what their dollar amount is. Oftentimes they will say there's an up to award. If you're just starting out and like you really have to be realistic with your project, I would not ask for $10,000 if the budget shows that you're only going to spend 5,000.
So question,
Mm-hmm.
I'm applying for a $100,000 grant, but it's $20,000 a year over 5 years. So this is what I was going to use this as an example. I know it seems like a huge amount of money. I get it, but that's what they've asked me to do. It's a private person. Somebody died and has lots of money. Now
Oh, fantastic.
this lawyer's like, there's money here, but you still have to write a grant form.
Are they providing you an application, or is it more of like a letter of interest submission, or?
It's like, write us what you want to use this money for and how much money do you want.
Okay. Are they asking
She's
for a
very
budget?
vague. They're very, very vague. She's a very nice lady. But I've looked through their things and they've given up to like $10,000, $20,000 over several years to several different organizations. And one just, actually the place I currently work at, they gave a grant to. So I know they're
That's
interested.
exciting. Yeah.
If it goes like this summer. So that's why I was wondering, like, when you do, I don't want to take up everyone's time, but like, should I just be absolutely specific with my spreadsheet, like I'm looking for X amount of money for carrying costs, and then I'm looking for X amount of money for a project, or should I specifically be like project, do you think?
Are you specifically asking about your budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, the budget. Uh, it might be a good question for them just simply to ask, how would you like to see my budget?
Okay.
You can use this budget template that we have, but what you would want to do is probably maybe have it be 5 annual budgets since it's over the course of 5 years, or phase
Yeah.
in that this is year one's budget, year two budget.
That's kind of how I've done it. Yeah, written it out right now. Like,
Yeah.
this is what it costs me now. Then I want to add this. So going forward,
Yep.
this is
And
how it's
then
going
in
to
your, probably your goals and activities, if that's how you, I mean, I personally think that you could actually use this Google form, create a document, and then sort of submit it as what it is they're asking for. And the goals and activities then would just match up with
Yeah.
your benchmarks for your activities would be your, the phased in approach.
I just don't want to overwrite something. My master's is in research and statistics, so I tend
Yeah.
to get a bit weird with my reports. So I don't want to, like, you know what I mean, overwrite something. I want to be.
Well, this is great. If you're using this as a practice run to have that grant in hand, we're here to tell you if we think that it's overwritten.
Okay, good. Thank
And
you.
Erin, I know we would circle back to you. You specifically asked whether or not it would be important to explain, describe who you're working with. And so why I kind of tabled that is when I was looking at the slides, where I was hoping that might come up is that problem or need statement would tell you that answer, because whatever need or problem it is you're trying to solve will be dependent, I'm assuming, on the type of population that you're serving, and then your activities would flow through. I would say that if this is really open-ended, being concise and maybe a little bit more specific on the why would be important, so it's not that everyone gets everything. But I think that's going to be up to you to use your discretion, especially if it's kind of a marginalized population that you need to explain why services are needed specifically for a group of people that might not normally have access to them. So is that helpful?
Yeah. Yeah, with my situation that the big thing I've been thinking about a lot is like there's the specific populations that like we want to serve that might not have like certain access, which care farming is such a great opportunity for such diverse populations. But then there's also this thing that's come up so much in the care farming community and in agriculture in general, that like it's not sustainable, like we can't, like, the farmer tends to not have enough support. Like the farmer is also this person who's like running a program, and like you're actually like 8 different, having 8 different hats on at the same time. And then also a lot of the feedback I've heard this year in the care farming community is about, like having a hard time connecting with support people, and like the support person, coming to the farm but not having an agricultural background, and like like not really knowing like the best way to get them to engage. Like it can be really hit or miss. And like just I don't know, this idea of what would it take to like synergize all these needs that like I think about populations that I would like to serve, like if I were wanting to serve like folks with different abilities, and then maybe like partnering that with like youth, and like like if there would be some way to do like a almost like a dual program thing, where like maybe there's this opportunity for like this connection where like this maybe people would be partnered, and like but they're partnered through this program in agriculture. And so there's kind of like this dual benefit of like this person is receiving services, and this person is receiving like training on like how to be a pro how to provide. So but then again, it's like like in my head, like my ideas sometimes they're so big and complex. It's like, when it comes to these grants and like you're trying to address a really complex problem, it's like, it's like how do you define that when it's like you've got a need in the population, but you've also got a need in the system and like,
Yeah. I think
yeah.
one answer to that is I will tell you, grantors do not want to get the sense when they're reading the grant that you don't know what you're going to do,
Mhm.
or that you haven't kind of solved for something. So when acknowledging a complex problem, one way through that could be like the problem or need statement is that includes that there's complexity to this problem. And one of the way to solve for that is to try a pilot. And maybe
Mhm.
your decision then that you need to make and be clear on is that because I know that it is difficult to get, say, job coaches or direct service professionals to the farm, I will pilot with a local agency for X amount of time and, solve for it. Yeah, Travis is mentioning AI too. Haven't even touched on that yet, but for those that do use AI, ChatGPT, that can be very, very helpful when you're in the midst of trying to kind of parse out some thorny issues to get some support. But think about, think, have your answers to those questions, those complex questions distilled down to a point where you do feel confident with a project that you want to test, even if it's just testing. It might not solve for it, but you have to have confidence that your testing methods and activities are worthy of putting resources to.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely where I feel like I'm at. Like the grant that I have in my head is definitely like a pilot project that, again, kind of like trying to serve different needs, like maybe providing like the initial programming, but then incorporating like a community event, maybe
Yeah.
a couple times a month at the end of the week. And then like, maybe a monthly like farm tour to help kind of build those networking connections so
Yep.
that say like if there was somebody who was doing a training component of this, then they can also, have like maybe a certificate or some sort of like a skill set at the end of the program that, that they, can utilize in the future. But again,
You're
it's like
already talking the
it's
good
extending.
language. You're talking about your outcomes and your outputs. And your output could be a community event, and your outcome is greater connection and more networking opportunities between those that you're looking to connect with.
Yeah, and I guess and
So,
that's just kind of my question is just like because it's a pilot and like it's all initial, like it'd be a startup kind of a thing. Like is it just too big? Like is it just too much in one grant?
why don't work through it? Start with something. Start with a grant amount, start with some goals and activities. By the way, you don't have to start with your project summary. Sometimes you can like finish your grant and come back and then be like, okay, now I can do my project summary. So maybe as you actually work through the grant and put a budget together and say, this is what I want to do, those pieces might start matching up and providing you a little bit more guidance as you write through it. And if you want to ever jump on a call sometime between now and October 1st and you want to talk through about it, I'm happy to do that too. That offer is
Thank
extended to
you.
anybody here. If you just find yourself stuck, either in starting or just you get to a place in it and you just need a little help, happy to help.
I have a quick question. I know we're getting toward the end of time here, but the one thing that I find that I'm running into is that I'm going after grants that are project-based, which this is a very similar outline, and finding success, but it's kind of funding a position where I sort of hit the wall and I'm like, you don't see a lot of requests for proposals that are like, hey, like we'd like to cover your staffing, costs, but most large nonprofits are funding their payroll through grants. They're just really, really large grants. Like, how do we jump from the small to even just like the mid-size? Like, how do we include a staffing position in there? Because I'm running into the issue where it's like, okay, we've got all these projects that we're going to do, but I'm not getting paid yet to manage them, which is fine for a little while while you're proving yourself.
Yeah.
We're okay with being in that stage for a while, but I feel like we're also ready now to like jump up. So is it just a matter of going after larger funders that are more used to seeing those kinds of asks and including like a program coordinator hours, or is
Yeah.
it? Like,
Yeah,
do you
Jen,
have-
I would say you could use a project of, you want to, your project is expansion of your care firm.
Okay, so
That
like
can be your project. And if that
project with the
includes
farm
then,
itself. Okay, yeah,
yep, and if that includes that your goals are to offer whatever you're
already doing,
to
right?
do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, and you need to build capacity and you need additional resources, then that's how you would account for that in your budget. Can absolutely be just an expansion. This does not have to be something new. This
Okay.
can all be crafted to support the work you're already doing, but I do think words like expansion or building towards or
I
something
like that
like
word
that in a project,
capacity sounds,
capacity,
that rings true
yeah.
for us. Yeah.
And especially if it's because you want to do more, and then there's your hook,
Yeah.
right? We're already doing this great thing.
Working, yeah.
Now we gotta do,
Yeah,
we want to do more and there's a rationale for it, but we're gonna need another person.
okay.
I will say, if you're gonna ask for things that, a lot of grantors want to know about the sustainability. So if they give you money for a year, what are you gonna do at the end of the year? So have that in the back of your mind that you might have some sentence in there that, I don't know, program fees will increase and therefore cover
It's
some
been no longer,
costs
okay,
of personnel or something. So,
cool, thank
yeah. So everyone feel good with the timeline? I know last month we checked to make sure everyone could get in.
I
Suna?
was sitting here last month and I definitely do not feel great about the timeline.
Okay.
I have, we're talking 2 weeks. I have an event on the 27th um and I have experienced grant writing and I've been pretty successful so far, and I know for me it takes a lot of time to do each of the things. I mean, it gets easier every time because now I'm just like cutting and pasting from different projects that
Yeah.
um I've asked for, um, and I have something in the works that the money has been approved for, but now I think the budget is changing because actually Sean from Prospect Meadow Farm is going to send his carpentry team to build something, and I think that is, even with the grant, even with the matching grants, is going to be easier to do.
Yeah.
But what I do want to do is do this, because so far the grants that I've written and received have been agricultural grants, and this is much more of a programmatic grant. And I thought the presentation was terrific, and I want to go through each of those steps and
Mhm.
come up with something, but I also know that I don't have the time to do it. So, I'm wondering if what you all think about, and I'm going to be actually in Turkey visiting my family next month from the 10th through the 20th. So I'm going to be gone during that period of time.
Well, you could always give us whatever it is you come up with, even if they're jotting down ideas.
Okay.
If you're not actually available when we meet on the 15th, then I wouldn't want you to, I have the dates right on that, right? Yeah,
Yep.
October 15th. Yep. Um, it might not be of benefit to just submit ideas if you're not there to also kind of hear feedback on
Yeah.
things. So
Yes, I'm
let
definitely
me,
not.
maybe
Can-
Andrea and I will talk and we'll figure
Okay.
something out and we'll get back to you.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm
I'm glad
definitely
to hear
drawn
that
to
it
the
was
idea
beneficial.
of like,
Yeah.
yep.
I do ask if you have any time, since y'all are a cohort and clearly your opinions matter to each other,
Mm.
please do take that time, if possible, to do even a quick scan and a couple notes back to people, because I think that will be really, really beneficial. We can look at our timing. As of now, we have November kind of as our last meeting. But more on that. What I will do is I will be following up with you all. I will send these slides back out. Everyone can get into the grant application. Feel free to reach out if you need to. I just check out that agenda, because once again, we are offering that beginning care farming series. And there's those 3 sessions. Many of you probably already watched these, but, those are available and registration is open for them. And then Sarah had also included in here, we do have another open office hours, October 21st. That's after we're meeting. Forget that. But come if you want. And a couple care farm tours, one in the Midwest and one in Pennsylvania. So. But we're here,
My
ready to
only,
answer any questions and help you
yeah,
out.
Alethea and I actually just wanted to confirm that like after October, like the last time that the mentor and mentees are supposed to be meeting is also October, correct? In terms of like with the program, or was the or were those phone calls supposed to continue, or those supposed to continue through the end of the year? We were a little confused about that.
I think we looked at November as being wrap up. We also
Okay.
have to do some wrapping up with the mentors. We're going to ask for them to do some evaluation. We're going to ask you all to do evaluations too for this. And I think our initial planning on that was end of October or back into mid-November. I do know that we had plans on like our final meeting together would be in November.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm not 100% clear on that right now, but we will get back to you. In terms of like your relationship with your mentor, I don't know if we talked about like kind of getting everyone together. Scheduling is so hard, right? But we do want to get feedback from you, and November is when we're going to do that and kind of have a celebration. So really the intention was to your discretion to meet with your mentor on site and to host your mentor. So I wouldn't say right now that there's any expectation that you are continuing to meet through November. Is that fair enough, Andrea?
Yep, I was just trying to find I was still trying to find our timeline too, but yes, that sounds
Yeah.
right.
I had my only other question is like, I know in the initial like application for the grant, like the goal of this mentorship was to hopefully like support folks with disability in obtaining a work, like being able to be hired. And I was just curious if that's still the goal, or like how, if there's like what your recommendations would be in like trying to take that into consideration when writing the grant.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely still the goal of this the mentorship program, because this is being funded by our USDA SARE grant, which the ultimate goal is to increase employment opportunities for people with IDD. So I mean, I think that, when we do the evaluation, we'll definitely have questions around like what meaningful progress you made during the mentorship. And that would definitely be specific to like incorporating, meaningful work opportunities, if not employment, like what progress you're making. For this specific opportunity writing the grant, I don't think it necessarily has to be around people with IDD. I mean, this is mainly to, provide a chance to get feedback on a grant that you would submit.
So no pressure to include that in the grant.
No, but I think, if it can, that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, again, just with the grant, this is meant to be of benefit to you all and not redundant just for us to have a grant application in hand. So.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is just create something for you all to do that's not useful.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for making time tonight, everybody. If we don't talk to you before October, we'll see you in a month. Except for you, Suna, have a wonderful time in Turkey.
Yeah. Thank you.
And,
so good to see everyone.
You bet.
Doing
All
it
right.
actually, and well, I know we'll speak